Good evening, everyone. I hope you're all having a wonderful weekend. Let's head on into Let's Go Help 2. All right, here we are in Let's Go Help 2. And today's class is the call for the nonprofit space out of the Help Now corner. It used to be Unlock Your Goals. And I really love that title, but this is much clearer, right? When we're in a moment of need, unlocking your goals doesn't sound like where we're wanting to head. We want to head to Help Now. And so it does make a lot of sense. So let's go into the launch a nonprofit space. All right, here we are in the launch a nonprofit space. And this may be down here. Yes. We have been working together in the action plan for your nonprofit, but neither of us had the time to come into Friday's class. I don't have any idea what she had going on, but my poor husband fell down the stairs Thursday night, and we have about 15 stairs. So he fell 12, 15 stairs, something like that. And he's almost 6'4". So he's this big guy coming, tumbling down the stairs. It felt like the house was coming down around us. I swear it was a horrible, horrible sound. I hope I never hear anything like it again in my entire life. And so it kind of consumed our world there for a couple of days. And he did actually end up not shattering, thank God, fracturing 2 of his vertebrae and 1 of his ribs. So yeah, it got kind of crazy. Friday was a little bit extreme for us. And so where we are at with the registering of Collectively Rewilding for a nonprofit, and I can't remember what I did with all of my paperwork. Perhaps I just went ahead and put it into our folder here. Let's check it out. I wasn't really quite planning on going over this with you guys, but I'm really intrigued by it all. And this is where we're at in some of our nonprofit branding, I guess, or whatever one would want to say. And so this is the worksheet. These are the instructions and worksheet that you have to do to see if you're eligible to fill out the 1023 Easy. So most of it I'm pretty comfortable with. I don't necessarily understand completely all the legal jargon, but I'm relatively good until we get to page 3, line 3, month tax year ends 01 to 12. Enter the months that your tax annual accounting period ends using a...
Allow me to introduce.
Did you have something you wanted
Allow me to introduce.
Okay. I'm not sure what was going on there. Okay. So, using a 2-digit number format. For example, if your annual accounting period ends in December, enter 12. Your annual accounting period is the 12-month period on which your annual financial records are based. Your first tax year could be less than 12 months. Check your bylaws or other rules of operation for consistency with the annual accounting period entered on line 3. So I don't have bylaws. I have articles of incorporation, which you get when you register with the state of Utah as a nonprofit corporation. All right, and so that looks like this, right? And you get all these, it's got the seal and the head, letterhead, and then all your official information. And I think that all has to be public, but I really don't know, so I'm not just going to be exposing it, right? And so I don't have bylaws. I need to get bylaws. I've worked with nonprofits before. I was the first secretary for the Wyoming chapter of Normal National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Law. And I handed that on to Carrie Satterwhite, who is still the secretary for the Normal chapter in Wyoming, continuing to push that struggle up there. Really amazing what she continues to do, her and the new board. I've also been on a board by the name of Revolt Against Plutocracy, or RAP, and that was kind of a big thing during the Bernie days. Kind of turned into a little bit of a fiasco, and I actually had to reprove my credentialing in the advocate activist world, because at first it was just the thing and then it wasn't just the thing. But finally, I was on the GNN board, and that was the Green News Network. And now the Green Party does actually have control of it because they co-opted it from us. But we were done with it, and we decided to leave them with the $3,000 tax burden that was still on that nonprofit. They'd been trying to take it from us for years, and we had no more faith in the Green Party. So when they stole it, we didn't protest and we let them take it. And so I understand bylaws. I just have not ever created any myself. And this is something Megan and Matthew both are a little bit more haphazard with their approach to things. I am very structured and organized. I like to know what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, and then follow the reasons that it's supposed to be set up as such. So as a for instance, Megan isn't too worried about who she would list initially for the next area that I came across, which is line 8, right? We had line 3. We're still on page 3, but now it's line 8. And this says, list the names, titles, and mailing addresses of your officers, directors, and or trustees. And she's just like, oh, you could just put somebody down. It doesn't really matter. But yes, technically, if you want to do it the way you're supposed to, you should have that done. And so I've already begun that approach. And let me just take a quick peek here, because guys, I'm going to throw you a little bit of a crazy loop here. Benny and Kendez, if either of you are interested in being on the initial board for the Collectively Rewilding Foundation, I would love to offer you that opportunity. It really has no responsibilities right now, but I don't want to just put names on lines. I would rather put real people that have said, yes, it is okay to be associated with this. And it actually looks really good on resumes and all different types of things. So you and I can talk about that later. Both of you and I, please feel free, of course, to talk amongst yourselves about it if you guys communicate before we get a chance to. But that is something I have to have taken care of. I've already talked to Ethel Grant, another one of the staff members here in Lesko Help too, and she's completely comfortable with it. At first, I wasn't going to include my mother, though she's been a big part of our community over in my network, right? Like Lesko Help 2 is Matthew Lesko's grant hunting network. And then I have another private, mine is public. I have another network within Mighty Networks. Matthew's is private, mine is public, and it's for free. You can join it and have a lifetime membership. It's all about getting people in touch with nature and agriculture and community and all these wonderful things. And so my mother's been a part of that, right? She's a part of my community, and she's actually mathematically inclined. And so I think I'm going to have to strong arm my mother into becoming the treasurer or chief financial officer. And then I think I'll invite Vanessa and of course, Miss Tammy as well. And so that's kind of what I'm thinking right now. That leaves us with an even board if we were to do that, right? So Benny, Kendez, Nita, Tammy, Ethel, and myself. However, as the initiator of all of this, I will probably have 2 votes. And so that makes it back to an uneven vote, right? And so, and that's of course if everybody's willing to become a part of it. But that is all a part of starting your nonprofit. Be aware. And so then I went through some things, not too concerned with it, read it, made sure I was okay with it. And I came to part 2, line 5, right? We were in part 1 on page 3. Everything of part 1 was good until line 3 and then line 8. Now we're in part 2, organizational structure, and line 5, purpose clause, okay? Your organizing document must limit your purposes to those described in section 501c3. Those purposes are charitable, religious, educational, scientific, literary, testing for public safety, fostering national or international amateur sports competition, and preventing cruelty to children or animals. So those are the specified categories. Charitable just being kind of an open-ended category. Then you have very specific: religious, educational, scientific, literary, right? All of these different designations. As I was going through, I had thought I might be interested in doing like educational or scientific, but as I was tearing through all of this, it became very clear that I will simply be a charitable organization as Collectively Rewilding, or Collectively Rewilding Foundation, which is not I, which is from inception supposed to have more than I, right? That's what we've kind of been talking about. That's where you have to, in your own head, when you're putting all of these different kinds of projects, or when you're working with other people and you think in your head something like this, you have to shift your language, right? So something to be aware of, absolutely. And so it looks like CRF, or the Collectively Rewilding Foundation, will simply be a charitable organization. It will not have a special designation. It gets a lot more complicated, and you have to be working with like a specific college or university, or the scientific, it has to be where you're running a certain amount of specific studies or things like that, right? So while I do some things within the scientific world and the educational world, it's not specific enough for their designations. So I have to go with the charitable designation. Not a big deal. It was a little bit of a bummer, but it was no big consequence for my overall goals in working to put this together, right? So that's something that would be a valuable conversation for anyone considering doing a nonprofit, right? When you're I and you're considering starting something such as a nonprofit, it isn't I, it is we. It is a collaborative effort towards a cause in your community, all right? And so with the founding of CRF, the Collectively Rewilding Foundation, I have to recognize, as the owner and operator and creator of Collectively Rewilding, the for-profit business, that at some point I may choose not to be, or could even lose the ability to be, a voting member on the Collectively Rewilding Foundation board. It is a completely separate entity from your for-profit venture, even though as a full corporation, which I am not, as Collectively Rewilding, the for-profit venture, right? I'm an LLC, and I'm going to file as an S Corp. And from my understanding of what my SBDC mentor and I have talked about, that simply means I have to file my taxes in a certain way. And he's letting me know I really can't keep doing my taxes myself. I need to get an accountant, right? And so that's the kind of stuff where Matthew has a different perspective. And I've really followed Matthew's guidelines a lot up until certain points when it just becomes less feasible for what I'm trying to do, right? And so at this point, because I do want to do all of these big picture things, it's time to involve a tax expert, a tax accountant. And so I do have to recognize, though, in forming this foundation, that at some point it may not really be much under my direction or guidance at all, right? And so those are some of the differences between a for-profit and a nonprofit business. Now, for a for-profit business, you can offer a for-profit business up on the trade market, right? Like for publicly traded stock. And at that point, you have to determine if you will still have the majority share. And like, there's all kinds of different things with all of this stuff when you get really, really big. But with a nonprofit, even though it's small, you have to understand that it is not yours. It is the community's to some degree, right? Does that make sense? Any questions from anybody on that? Okay.
Yeah,
Mr. Brennan, so the for-profit and the nonprofit have the same name, kind of similar name?
That was my choice. That does not have to be the case. It does happen a lot of times for corporations. So let's just utilize, and Megan is the one who taught me this, right? So you have Walmart, and then you have the Walmart Foundation, okay? But it doesn't guarantee that the Walmart Foundation is still controlled by the Walden family or whatever their names are, Walton.
Yeah.
I don't know that it's not, but once it enters that nonprofit status, it just has this, it's a new animal, right? Does that make sense? Does that answer your question at all?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And so it is a completely, these two things that I'm doing, they're completely separate. You have to have completely separate books. So literally, I have completely separate books. This is my foundation book, and this is my for-profit book. And I actually run two for-profit businesses. So this is my original for-profit business in working with this community and working with Matthew Lesko. I've actually operated two daycares that I owned and operated as well, but this is a different kind of a venture than a daycare, just a home daycare that was known by the state, right? It was legal, but it wasn't an official daycare. It wasn't a licensed daycare. You don't have to be a licensed daycare if you don't go past certain points. Your clients can still claim it on their taxes, and the state still knows about it, and there's still rules and things like that, but it's just not an officially licensed daycare. You have to look in each different state for what their rules are. But I had one in Wyoming and one in Colorado. Then we moved to Utah, and that's when I started working with Matthew and started a whole new business, because obviously this is not a daycare, right? And so it's very important that you keep entities distinct in your paperwork, especially monetary paperwork, but any paperwork really, right? And so there's my poor husband with his cane. He's not excited about the cane. He keeps forgetting and setting it down, and then he'll walk away from it and be like, oh my God, I have to do something where I need it. He doesn't like to have things in his hands. So this is going to be a real challenge for him. But those are some definite things to think about if you ever want to start a nonprofit. I also need to come up with a dissolution clause. And in that dissolution clause, it has to state that the assets will be transferred in a specific way. So let's see. Your organizing document must permanently dedicate your assets for a Section 501c3 purpose. This means that if you dissolve your organization in the future, your assets must be distributed for an exempt purpose described in Section 501c3, or to the federal government, or to a state or local government for a public purpose. So when I read this clause, the one that immediately came to my mind is this nice little Tooele nonprofit here that is a nonprofit to help other nonprofits establish themselves in the Tooele County. And I think that's a really good endeavor. So that would have been something that maybe I consider leaving it to, right? So those are things that came up as I was reading the application worksheet. This is the worksheet to see if you're eligible. All right, then you get to part 3, your specific activities. And you must briefly describe your mission or most significant activities, and you only have 250 characters. That's not very many characters, you guys. Describe the most significant activity or activities you conduct or will conduct to accomplish your tax-exempt 501c3 purposes, and they provide some examples. For example, an organization that plans to provide relief for the poor and distressed by providing free meals at a homeless shelter could enter, we will provide relief for the poor and distressed by providing free meals at a homeless shelter. Pretty succinct, right? The two that they provided down below that were the most comparable to what I want to do are example 2, an organization formed to increase the knowledge of its members and the public about historic events, about agricultural thought processes and pursuits, right, would be what I would switch it to. And then there says, by researching, studying, and involving its members in historically accurate reenactments to which the public was invited, qualified for exemption under Section 501(3) as an educational organization. Interesting. And then example 3, an organization formed to prevent cruelty to animals by subsidizing spaying and neutering for pet owners who otherwise couldn't afford the services qualified for the exemption under Section 501c3 as an organization formed and operated exclusively for the prevention of cruelty to animals. And so while mine won't have a specific designation like those did, right, education and cruelty to animals, the language that they use can be easily modified to fit what I am doing, right? Okay, and let's see if that's Megan there joining us. And it does not look like it. Okay, so I don't know that I got any. Oh, yep, I did. Okay, so then everything went pretty smoothly until, and I think this is in a new part. Let me figure out what part number this is. Okay, so we were still in part 3, specific activities. That has not changed over. And you have line 6, compensation to officers, directors, or trustees. Check yes if you pay or plan to pay compensation to any of your officers, directors, or trustees. Well, that would be the point. We would want to pay at least something towards the people that are handling all of this in the future, right? Not today, but in the future. And so that is plan to pay compensation, right? And Megan was actually saying that they've increased the laws that make it almost necessary to compensate appropriately. I'm not sure. Again, she's the expert, right? Okay, so line 9 is the next one that I kind of had a little bit of question around. Financial transactions with officers, directors, or trustees. Check yes if you have engaged in or plan to engage in financial transactions. For example, loans, grants, or other assistance payments for goods or services, rents, etc., with any of your officers, directors, or trustees, or any entities they own or control. So I do want to have the nonprofit take donations to provide the platform for free, right? So that's something I have to talk to Megan about. All right, and then again, it kind of went on and it was relatively smooth. And then that's still in section or line 9, I believe. No, we have moved on to part 4, foundation classification. And so a section 509A2 public charity that receives substantial revenues from a combination of contributions, membership fees, and gross receipts from activities that further its exempt purpose is the one that I think that I would choose, but I have to talk to her about that, right? There are 4 choices there. The first choice is a section 509A1 public charity described in section 170B 1A5, or excuse me, 6 as the Roman numeral 6, that receives substantial support in the form of grants and contributions from governmental units, the general public, and other public charities, right? Then the one that I picked, and the third option is a section 509A1 public charity described in section 170B 1A Roman numeral 6 that operates for the benefit of a college or university that is owned or operated by a governmental unit, right? So that's where we talked about that educational designation. And yes, I'm not sure your name. iPhone, you raised your hand.
Hey, yes, I have a question for that part for when you apply for the 501c3 and I guess you're waiting for a while. I was kind of unsure if that means that I have to wait for that to be accepted for then me to apply to grants, or are there also grants I could apply to in the meantime?
It'll probably state the requirements like that in their eligibility criteria type of information. You can also partner with other nonprofits in some cases so that they already have that tax exempt status, and then you're able to work under their tax exempt status. Now, this gets into something that Megan is more familiar with.
Okay.
I have simply heard her talk about it. And I also was offered that opportunity through that Tooele, it's the Tooele Valley Community Co-op, I believe. They wanted to have too much control over the money. I'm going to be applying for my 501c3 designation so quickly that it didn't make any sense for me to hand them that much control over my money. I talked with Megan about it, right? And so it's all about working within the structure of the law, and there are different options, but I am not the best one to break those down for you. But that's some of the different thought processes around the question that you're asking, right?
Okay.
Does that help you?
Yeah, that helps. What is that process called when it comes to you using another nonprofit as a partnership? Like if I were to do
It's
that.
basically a partnership. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, they may have a different title for it if it's something that they do on a consistent basis. But yes, you're being taken under their wing, under the umbrella of their 501c3 designation.
Okay. Is that like a written agreement or just solely based on?
I would imagine yes, because you need to be able to give out the information to someone who wants to make a donation to your 501c3, right?
Okay. Makes sense.
Yeah, paperwork would probably almost always be involved. There was certainly an application process for me if I had wanted to be partnered with the Tooele Valley Community Co-op.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right. Excuse me. And then the final designation in this little area here is a private foundation. And there were all kinds of specific separate instructions if you want to be a private foundation. That is generally something that family maybe gives the money for. It's a much different kind of an enterprise, right? And so then continuing on, I do think I'm remembering now, I got through the whole thing. And so then still under, oh, this is line 1. We must have gone to a new section. Okay, so then it says types of revenue and sources of revenue. It's not like a new part per se, but it's a subsection. And so we're in these subsections, and line 2A under sources of revenue, check this box if you meet or reasonably expect to meet the requirements for the 170B1A Roman numeral 6 public support test. So I put a check mark there because I think that that's the correct thing, but I definitely want to make sure and verify that with Megan, right? And then you go through all of these different steps, and this is where I would absolutely have to have an accountant. It's just crazy to even read it. Step 1, total all gifts, grants, and contributions, parentheticals, including those from governmental units and public charities, and parentheticals. Don't include exempt activity revenues and unusual grants, which they've already talked about these things, right? Step 2, multiply the amount from step 1 by 2%, parentheticals 0.02, and parentheticals. This is your 2% threshold amount. Gifts, grants, or contributions from persons other than governmental units and public charities can be treated as public support only up to the 2% threshold. Step 3, excluding gifts, grants, and contributions from governmental units and public charities, add together contributions of any person that exceed the 2% threshold amount calculated in step 2. And then they go into an example, and then they have 4 more steps, and it just gets more complicated as it goes on. So math is my kryptonite. I will definitely be wanting to get additional assistance. And so then I continued reading on through the little set of instructions, and then I actually filled out the worksheet, and I do qualify. I answered no on all the questions, right? And yes, you'll have another question.
Yep, you mentioned like additional support for those extra things that you're probably like not knowledgeable of, especially when it comes to let's say payroll or like hiring a person for that. Like, is there a program that can that type of advice or consulting maybe?
There is you can get free mentorship for nonprofits through score.org.
Okay.
And you can request help with financial tasks. You have to give one specific thing that you would really like to work on with your SCORE mentor when you fill out the application to get a score.org mentor. And so that looks like this, right? All you need to do is just type score.org. Bam, you're there. All right. Get free expert mentoring to grow your small business. But unlike the SBDC, they can work with nonprofits.
Okay, sounds good.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Would you like me to share this in the group?
Yep, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Okay, and so this is the Launch a Nonprofit call. So I'm going to jump into the Ask a Question space, or excuse me, tab here. It's all in the same Launch a Nonprofit space. We arrive on the course. We're jumping into the Ask a Question tab, and then you have the events listing in the Join a Call tab there. All right, and so what is your name, iPhone, so that I can tag you?
Oh, right. It's Jeremiah and then Reyes, Reyes.
And
Yep.
there you are. All right, and so this is Gore. Gore. I can't type. I have this Band-Aid on my finger. I'm sorry, guys. Give me a second. Gore. There we go. Gore.org for free mentorship around non. All right. And then I'll actually put the link so it'll generate that nice little link preview for us.
And then there was another website. I think it was like what was it? It was Tully Valley.
That was here when I was working, or something else you'd seen.
It was for the partnership for a nonprofit. You said there was another resource. There was a resource for that.
Megan? Megan is our in-house nonprofit expert. I don't know if that's who I'm going to ask all my questions. When I went through, where did I put it? When I went through the worksheet, right, to see if I'm eligible to fill out the 1023 EZ.
Yep.
I have questions that I'll be asking Megan. And so we struggled to do this class. We're both spread a little thin, so we weren't able to make this last Friday's class. I thought I would come in and share with you the questions that I have as I went through this eligibility worksheet. And then hopefully she and I will be able to meet up on Friday and we can talk with her about the questions that I have. Or perhaps she and I will meet and talk about my questions and then just share that recording and then meet up to go to the next step. Something, right? We'll figure it out.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
Absolutely. All right, guys. So this class is actually supposed to end in 5 minutes, and I still have not heard from Megan, so I have not advertised for her next class. So I'm going to actually just kind of bump this back to yesterday, and then if she wants to do something different with it, she'll be able to. But I don't want to go through her next class, right? So this one I have a little bit more familiarity as I'm going through it. And it's also a system that we have set up in that Help Now corner, right? Help Now corner for the Launch a Nonprofit space. And so it's something that I can handle a little bit better. She does her own type of presentation for the next class. So we won't have that today as I'm aware of right now. Let's just refresh that screen so that it will show the edits. And so our next class will be tomorrow at 12 o'clock p.m. Pacific, 1 o'clock p.m. Mountain, 2 o'clock p.m. Central, and 3 o'clock p.m. Eastern for All Business with Amber Hawkins. And I will be back with you all on Tuesday, the 7th, and that's a Q&A with myself, Sabrina, at 3 o'clock p.m. Pacific, 4 o'clock Mountain, 5 o'clock Central, and 6 o'clock Eastern. Hope to see you guys all there, and please feel free to unmute your mics and say good night, everyone.
Good night.
Okay, thank you.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Bye.
Sorry it wasn't the class you were expecting. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, everyone.